motherboard onto the case. Okay, it's not velcroed, it's not glued on, it's not hot glued. Okay, so what you do usually is you put these standoffs. A standoff, if you look at this, the shape of it, is hexagonal. Okay, it has threaded here, and it also kind of has threads on the other side. So this thing screws on top of this metallic plate, and then your motherboard would go on top of it, and then you have another screw to fasten the motherboard onto the spacer. Okay, but sometimes if you don't do it right, which I do all the time, is you tension this thing incorrectly. So when you turn the screw, instead of loosening the screw from the standoff, it loosens the entire thing out. Now that is dangerous, okay? Especially if you use a power tool. What happens when you use a power tool, and this whole thing is one single piece, is it will basically jack up the entire motherboard. Now depending on whether the rest of the motherboard is loose already, if the rest of the motherboard is still attached and you use a power tool to extract the screw like this, you can risk killing the motherboard. Because too much flex on the motherboard will break the internal traces. Now, but since we're talking about replacing the motherboard, that's not an issue, right? But it is still an issue if the whole thing comes out. You still have to kind of take the screw away from the standoff. Okay. In other words, it's a big hassle to change the motherboard. So the bottom line is, don't do anything that can be potentially harmful to the motherboard, because it's a big hassle to change it. Now, after you change the motherboard, you rehook up everything. Let's say that everything else continues to work just fine, and you start up Windows 7. What do you think will happen? You have to how do they call that? Not authorization, it's
authentication.
No, not registration either. Microsoft has a term for that. When you install Microsoft products, you have to kind of hook up to their server and
verification.
Sorry?
Verification.
No, it's not verification. This is a specific term. I just cannot remember the term.
Pretty sure it's authentication.
Genuine advantage?
Yeah, but what does it do? There's a term for what it does. But anyway,
Validation.
Windows.
Validation.
It's kind of like that, yeah. But then Microsoft has a very specific term. Activation. That's it. Yeah. You might need to reactivate your Windows 7 that you pay for and you have been using for years. Okay. The reason is, when you change the motherboard, unless you use exactly the motherboard as before, the same type, or the one that uses the same chipset, otherwise, Windows 7 will say, oh, it's a different chipset, different IDE, SATA controller, different network controller, different video card, and so on and so forth. I'm not so sure I should let you keep using this product for the time being. You might want to call us first to reactivate the product, get a new key and reactivate the product. Yeah, Windows 7 would do that. Yeah. In other words, another hurdle to change the motherboard. Yep.
When you said talking about cleaning off the thermal paste, what do you use to do that? Just like
Alcohol.
Alcohol?
I would use like 99% alcohol from Fry's. They sell those things in 32-ounce bottles, so they're not too expensive, about $10, and they do a really good job dissolving the grease and all that stuff. It's actually not really grease. It's not oil grease. It's silicone-based grease, so it actually cleans off really easily if you have alcohol. It's also not very toxic, so you don't have to really use it in a well-ventilated area, like some other solvents. Okay. So after the motherboard comes what? Okay. There are several things you can do next to this. You can talk about the SATA hard drives. And there's really not a whole lot to talk about except for the capacity. How much space do you need? That's the question. Okay, I think by today's standard, you basically start with at least 320 gigabytes. Can you find 3.5-inch drives that are less than 320 gigabytes?
Yeah, I can.
You can, but are they significantly cheaper than the 320 gigabytes?
Yeah. I picked up a 60 gigabyte hard drive for like $30.
Okay, that's good.
So it's not bad.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's about, in terms of gigabytes per dollar, that's about the same as my 500 gig hard drive for $50. Yep. So 320 to 500 gigabytes for most people should be enough. It depends on what you're doing, okay? But you need, terabytes, okay? 1 to 2 terabyte for home theater PCs. If you plan to record shows, on your computer, and depending on how much stuff you're recording, before you have a chance to view and delete, the video clips, even 2 terabytes may not be enough. Okay, I have, on my home theater PC, because we haven't watched, anything for a long, long time, so stuff is rolling off, before I have a chance to watch. I should stop recording, the kids' shows because the kids don't watch it anymore. Okay. Any other questions? You can also use RAID to expand the amount of storage. Okay. The other aspects of a hard drive, like seek time and latency, they are really about the same across most drives. Now, high density drives are faster. And that's really hard to find out whether you have a high density drive, because there are many ways to make a 500 gigabyte drive. You can have, the Samsung design that I talked about on Tuesday is a single platter hard drive. In other words, it's a very high density platter, and one single platter can store 500 gigabytes. On the other hand, you can also have 4 120 gigabyte platters, okay, which means it's a lower density type of platter. But typically, if the platter has a higher density, that means the drive is also faster. Okay, as a general rule, not always true, but as a general rule, you want to look into the platter density. You cannot find that from Newegg usually, but you can find it from other types of reviews like Tom's Hardware and other types of benchmark reviews. Typically will analyze the drive from the physical perspective, like how many platters does it have, what is the actual seek time, and so on and so forth. The advertised seek times are usually not accurate either. Okay. Any other questions about SATA hard drives? No questions? Okay, well, I'll just go ahead and stop here. So what you need to do is you want to kind of keep working on your documents, or start to collect these data points and start to write, not to write the actual report, but to use one document to organize everything. Okay, so let's say you're setting up a home theater PC, so you want to kind of go through this list that we have already at this point and make sure that you can make the decisions up to this point. Okay, because once you have all the data, then later on we can just reorganize everything into a report pretty quickly. Okay, so do the homework, quote unquote, your homework, as we go along, because otherwise this is going to take some time, when it is actually finished. All right, so I will go ahead and save this document. And my next class has a midterm, so. Yeah, I did this once with a good motherboard. I almost killed it.
Oh.
I did not take roll on Tuesday. Okay. Was it busy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the data execution bench for someone to make your hard nervous a little bit.
It was a data execution.
He looked over at me and said, "Is he serious?"
Right. Into the short stuff. Yeah, it's basically a hardware approach to stop buffer overflow and stack overflow exploits, which is a good thing. Yeah, you definitely want a processor. I think all processors are like that now. Yeah, it's also a
In this
feature
kind
of
of
the
class,
operating
class
system.
scares me because like
I think
I
all
feel like
operating
I feel
systems
like there's stuff I'm missing because you don't.
Yep.
What time did you say that it was going to be tomorrow for CISB?
Yep. In your case, it's tomorrow 8 at the lab.
Are we going to come back to the class during the
Yeah, we're gonna come back to the class. Okay. Yep.
I know it depends on how long, how we study, but how long do you get tested so you know what I actually studied? Because my rate
According to my experience yesterday, which is almost the same test for another class, for the other class that I have, most students are done within 40 minutes, 40 to 45 minutes. The classroom is like more than half empty.
because I need I just drove up and parked. And my whole entire, just I walked outside and my whole car was smoking. And then all my food was on the other.
Oh, okay.
The antifreeze. So
Yeah.
it's I can't even if I start the car.
Right. You need it to be taken care of.
That's why,
but from now on, it's if you have to stay here a little bit longer, it's not gonna be a big deal. You just need to need to have it told.
Yeah, I already got it. I got roadside service, so it's cool.
Oh, okay. So
I
that's
just have to make sure I tell you as soon as I get home.
okay. That's fine. Yep. Mm-hmm. Not a problem. Good morning. How's the VB class coming along?
It's coming along good.
Is it kind of driving with this stuff? Because these two classes are planned completely independently, but somehow we just kind of drive, we just kind of talk about the same concept at about the same time.
Yeah, we're talking about passing by balance, passing by reference in that class too.
Oh, that's great. That is just great.
I was
Excellent.
wondering, next semester you're teaching a VB application class.
Yeah.
What exactly is that class? What does it do?
That's an interesting question because that class has an interesting audience. Now with this class, I can pretty much assume that you guys want to learn how to program, and even though your major may not be computer science, you still need to know how to program. That class is a little bit different because some people just want minimal, as little programming as possible to automate certain things in Microsoft Word, Excel, or PowerPoint presentations. And they use Visual Basic for that purpose. You can attach little pieces of code to certain things, and you can make a button trigger the execution of the VB code. So it can go from very simple stuff to complicated stuff. And it's a difficult class to teach because of that. In that class we have students coming in from the VB class because they want to know, okay, now I know everything about VB or just about anything about VB. How do I use VB to automate something that I want to do in Microsoft Word? So those people come, ready to program on day one. They just need to know specific things to hook up Visual Basic to the application program, okay, which is easy. And then you have people who come from, okay, I use Microsoft Word as a word processor, but now I want to automate certain things, okay? How do I do it? That's the other part of the audience. And it's more difficult to teach application people how to program than to teach programming people how to hook up, VB or VBA to a particular application.
Yeah, I think I'm taking next semester.
But it's basically a bridge class, to bridge, programming to the application itself. And we usually mostly access, in that class, because the VBA has more applications in Access than in any of the other Microsoft products. Maybe Excel too. Excel and Access, probably has the most need of VBA.